Hey YouTube, I've been having a lot of fun in Snap recently, so I thought I would make a little tutorial just for fun. Snap is very similar to Scratch, but it's made by a different team of people at UC Berkeley. Scratch is made by people at MIT. So, today we're going to just make a little bouncing ball. So we're going to start by making a ball that just bounces around the screen off the edges without gravity. So we're going to start, we'll just paint a little sprite here. I'm going to do a filled circle and just give it a nice color. So if you hold shift, it'll draw a circle for you, not a ellipse. If you let go of shift, it does an ellipse. So I'm just going to do a circle here. I'm going to hit OK. And actually, I guess I could have just painted that in the existing sprite, so I'll just delete this. Before I delete this, though, actually, what I want to do is I'm going to set the background to be a little darker, just for aesthetic reasons. So I'm going to go to the stage and the pen, and we have this block that says set background color. So I'm going to click on the color and then I can choose it from here. I like this color, which is the default pointer sprite color. And then if I just click this block, it'll happen. I don't need to run it or anything, so that's kind of nice. And okay, so now I'm going to actually just delete this because we don't really need it. So here's our first sprite. We'll just rename it to be ball. Hit enter. Cool. It's draggable. That's kind of how it is by default. But we can turn that off if we want. So it's not, but I'm going to leave it on for now. All right, so what's the first thing that we need to do? I guess we need to give it some velocity. So we're going to make some variables here, and they're going to be all for this sprite only. So we'll do, let's see, I guess we'll give it X and Y variables, because that gives us more control later on when things get more complex. There's already, by default, each sprite has a sort of X and Y that's associated with it. So we could just use that. So we have like X position right here and Y position. But we're going to make our own for now, and that'll come in handy in the future tutorials. Okay, so now we want velocity X, and for this sprite only, velocity Y for this sprite only. And I think that's all we need for now. So let's first start by setting our X and Y to 0. I just like to do it this way because it's closer than going all the way here and dragging it back, you know? So I just duplicate it right here. I guess I could have done that faster by duplicating 2 at a time. Anyway, so why don't we just start with something simple, like we'll just set the X velocity to 3 and the Y velocity to 3. So nothing will happen yet. When I click this, it'll execute, but nothing happens because we need a loop here. So we're going to just get a forever loop. And we're going to say forever go to X and then we'll drop in our x variable here and our y variable here. And then what we have to do is change our x and y by our velocity. So change x by vx. I'll just duplicate this. Change y by vy. Get rid of that extra guy. Okay. So if I hit this, it should move. Yeah, there we go. And then it just goes off screen. So I'm going to hit stop. And when I hit this again, it'll come back to the center, and then I'll just stop it again. All right. So now what we got to do is make it bounce off the walls. And to do that, we're going to go to control, and we're going to find an if block. So let's see, I think I'll actually put this underneath here, the go-to portion. So inside the if block, we want to say if the position of the ball is on the edge here, we're going to change the velocity somehow. So I'll get to that in a sec. So first we got to do if we're going to go into an operator here. If x is equal to, we'll start with x. So if x is equal to the position of the edge here, right? So in Snap, and I think it's the same with Scratch, the origin, or I guess the center is the origin, so it's 0, 0 here, and then the edge over here is 240, and then so it's 240 and then negative 240, and then down here is negative 180 and 180. So we're going to do if x equals 240, we're going to set our velocity to our velocity times, so let's get this multiply operator, vx times negative 1. So that reverses our x direction. And just to make this simpler for a sec, I'm going to set vy to 0 at the beginning. Oops. So we just click it to watch it work. And it worked. But it went past this point. Now let's just make sure everything's working. So we're going to set this to a higher number. So we'll put that to 10. I keep clicking the thing. You know what? I'm just gonna go here and put this here because it's a force of habit to click that. So when the flag is clicked, okay, it worked. That's surprising. I was expecting it to actually phase through the wall because what I have here doesn't account for the ball skipping past that point. So here, let me try one more time. We'll do like 30, so it'll be going real fast here. So, oh, it still worked. Wow, that's surprising. Oh, maybe if I do like an odd number. I don't know. There we go. So I did 31 and it just went right through. That's what I was trying to demonstrate. And the reason for that is because there wasn't a single frame where the x position equaled 240. So we actually need to use a greater than. So if the x is greater than 240, set vx to vx times negative 1. Now this can have its own problems. It's not having a problem now, but what can happen with this is sometimes it'll get stuck in the wall. So it'll go slightly past the wall. Let's see, if I just do like 5 or maybe 6, I'm not really sure how to how to get it to do exactly the thing. But what'll happen sometimes if you have this, if you get unlucky, it'll get stuck in the wall. So it'll constantly be switching its velocity. Actually, what I can do is I can like start it inside the wall. So if I set x to, just to demonstrate this right now, so if I set x to, let's say 245 maybe, and then I set the velocity to 4. See how it's stuck in there? But if I get it out, oh, it'll go right back. Interesting. So to counteract that, what we want to do is actually, before we change the velocity to be negative of what it is, we're going to set the x position to 240. So now, even if it starts right there, it'll come out. Now, obviously, it's not quite hitting the edge. It's going past the edge, and that's because the center of the ball is hitting the edge, right? So we actually need to use the radius of this ball, and we don't really know that information. But there is a way to calculate it in Snap. So it's kind of an extra bit of calculation. So we want to use the size block. So that's right here. And actually, I'm just gonna make a variable for the radius. So we're gonna do radius. Or I guess we can just do r for this sprite only. And the size is really only necessary if you're changing the size, because the size by default is 100. Okay, so how would we deduce the size or the radius of this sprite? So we go to looks, and we're going to go to, there's this block called width of costume, and you notice that it's rounded here. It's not like a puzzle piece like these ones are. So this actually fits right into one of these things. So this is kind of a value. So this just gives us the width of our costume. So we're going to just do, I guess costume 1 is the one we're using. And if I click it, it'll give me a number. So that's 104. So that's how wide it is. So we just need to divide that by 2 to get our radius. So, and we could use height as well since it's a circle. So width of costume divided by 2. Okay, so we're going to get another variable here. We're going to set our radius to the width of our costume over 2. And that's all we need to do. If you change the size of this sprite, you will need to multiply it by the size times 100 to get the percentage, something like that. But we'll do that later. So now we have our radius. So we need to do, in this number right here, 240 and 240, we actually need to do 240 minus our radius. So we're just going to drop this in here. 240 minus r. And that's it. And we want the same thing. So I'm just going to duplicate that here. So set x to 240 minus radius. So it should work now. Whoops. We're going to go back here and set x to 0. And so Vx, velocity of x is still going to be 4. There we go. So now it bounces off the edge. So that makes sense, right? And we're just going to do the same thing. I'm going to make the whole thing over again because it's going to be slightly different for the reverse of that. So if our x is less than, and then we're going to do a plus. We're going to do 240. No, sorry, negative 240. Plus our radius. And let's see. Yeah, we don't need to duplicate that because it's going to be different again. So we're going to just set our y position to negative 240 plus r, duplicate, and set our velocity y to, and we can actually duplicate this one because this will be the same, because we're just going to do vy instead. So vy times -1. All right, so now it should bounce back and forth. Oh, what happened there? Oh, I set y. My mistake. So set x. Now what has happened? Oh, I had a total brain fart there. I changed the y velocity here as well. Did not need to do that. Sorry, guys. Okay. Maybe I should re-record that part. All right. Now, it should work. This is why Scratch is great, because if you make a mistake, you can just easily see it happen instantly and correct it. So now I'm going to duplicate all of this, but we don't need this extra one, so I'm going to get that out of there. So now we need to change the y values. So I'm going to drag some y's in here and another y right there, and get these extra x's out of there. Vy and vy. And now we actually need to change it in the drop down. So this is y, vy. Oh wait, that one I shouldn't have changed. Y, vy. I'm kind of bad at this whole tutorial thing. Vy. Okay, change this one back to where it was. Okay. And so this is going to be different though, this number. This is going to be 180 for the top. And then this is going to be -180. And and we have to change it here too. So 180 and -180. Okay. All right, so now we should be good. So I'm going to set our velocity of our y velocity to 4 so that it's going diagonal now. And boom, now it's bouncing off the corners, nice and easy. All right, so what if we wanted to change our size? So let's say we just set this to 50% of what it is. So if we go to looks, there's an option to change the size of our costume. So we're going to do, oh no, I think it'll be easier to do set size. Where is that? Set size, here we go. Set size to 50%. So that's half of our thing. So if we just click that, that'll happen. So it's 50% now. So the radius is going to be, we need to somehow use this number 50 to find, to get the number 1/2, right? Because we're going to multiply r by 1/2. So all we have to do is do size over 100. So let's grab a divide block. So we're just going to do, and then we're going to use size right here. Size over 100. So that'll help us find the actual percentage that the size is, and we can just multiply these together. I suppose there would be a shortcut to this if we just like canceled out the 2 and the 100, but we don't need to do that. So like we could just simplify it, but just so that it's nice and easy to understand what's happening, we'll leave that like that. Okay, so set r to that. So now it should work with the smaller, yep, there we go. And we can actually just drag this in here so that we can choose whatever size we want at the beginning. Whoops, I typed 10 instead of 100, silly me. There we go. Now, why don't we just make a variable for the size? So we can do size, and I guess actually probably want that to be local also. So make a variable for this sprite only, size, and this will be fun. So watch this, and here's what we got to do. So what we're going to do is actually set size to a number, and then set this size to something, and you'll see why in a sec. Actually, I wonder, I just realized something. What if we had this visible and then we made it a slider? No, you can't make it a slider. So this is the reason we're doing this is they both say ball size. That's funny. So right here, you can actually make these sliders, which is really cool. So I can actually take this variable we just made and drag it, but you can't do that with one of these, which is sort of like an attribute, I guess, that's like built into Snap. So I'll get rid of that. So this is the reason we're doing this, and you'll see in a sec. It's pretty fun. So it makes it a little more interactive. So we're setting the size, and we want to, let's see here. So let's say, what do we want to do? I guess we'll keep it simple. So we'll just have it be 1 to 100, and so that'll just be our percent of the size. So it'll be a nice 1-to-1 correlation. So we'll set size to 100, and then we'll set size to size percent. Okay, so it'll still be 100%, right? Now, what we can do is we can make it so that it changes as we drag this. So what we want to do for that is we actually need to have this be in our forever loop. So it's always changing based on what that variable is. And then it's always resetting R. So we can shrink it and it'll still bounce properly. So that's pretty cool, right? So as I'm changing, it's going to still bounce because it's constantly updating the R. And one more thing that we can do really quickly just to make sure everything runs smoothly. There's this block called warp. And so we can just put that over everything in the forever loop. Oh, actually that made it slow. Never mind. Well, we don't really need it here because it's not you really use that for other instances when you're drawing something. And we'll get to that in the future tutorials. We will be drawing a ball with the pen instead of using a sprite. And there's a good reason to do that, because you'll notice that the sprite is kind of laggy. I don't know if that's just my computer or if that would happen for you guys. But you see as it renders, it kind of does this glitchy thing sometimes. And so that's where the pen comes in handy. So we'll get to that in the future tutorials. We'll also add some gravity, and we will get the balls to collide with each other, and that's the fun part. That takes a lot of math. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. This is my first tutorial in Snap, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was not too meandering, which I think it kind of was. But yeah, stay tuned for the next one. See you guys.